Hello there, Meroskine here. Happy New Year, game devs. I hope you had nice holidays and that you spent quite time with family and loved ones, because it's time for some new videos. If you haven't watched the Basic 4 video series, please do, because everything we're going to go in from now on assumes you've watched them. Also, while I will try to make these new specialist videos plug and play, there will be some subjects which will necessitate you to have watched the previous ones. I also invite you to join us on our Discord server to hang out with the other students at our Renpy Academy, also to subscribe and bell this YouTube channel so that you never miss a new upload. With that said, the first subject of 2026, as voted for by our supporters on Patreon, is... During the basic tutorial series, we went over images, how to define them, how to display them, even how to use them in a very basic way, hence the title. In this video instead, we will go over my favorite way of defining and using images, layered images. I favor layered images over basic images, especially when it comes to character sprites, for a couple of reasons. First is optimization. A layered image is a single image object made up of many different layers of the type you would find in an image editing software like GIMP or Affinity, which can be turned on and off with code. Meaning that instead of having a lot of duplicate images with just a couple variations but the same weight in bytes, you can have a bunch of different pieces that you can mix and match to create all the combinations you want. You can see here on the screen the weight of the original images we had for Penny's sprite on the left. On the right here, instead, we have the images which we will now be using to create a layered sprite. You can see a clear difference, yes? And while for a test game with just 2 characters it won't seem much, if you start adding a lot of sprites and locations and customization, the size of the game can get away from you really quickly. Second reason is customization. Say you want to make a character that changes outfits or hair or anything like that. Each possible variation means making a new set of sprites with the basic method. Even something as banal as 2 different hair colors means you'd need 2 different sets of 9 images. But what happens if, instead, you have layered images? Let's find out! First of all, download the lesson materials for today's lesson, as they are different images from the ones we've used so far. You'll see that there is one image which contains a faceless body, and a set of different images which are mostly transparent. Copy these files and paste them over the old ones in the tutorial project. Now for code. We're going to need to add another image to the ones we already defined, and then we're also going to change the way they're named a little bit. First, the new image, which in the folder is called body_base.png. We're going to define a new static image called penny_body_base. Add the equal sign. Then we add the path to the image itself using one of the methods we learned in the basics video. Again, you need to watch them. All of this assumes you have. After that, it's time to modify the way the old images we defined are named. This is because we only need these to be static images, we don't need them to be expressions of an image object anymore. So, using Ctrl-H, which is a shortcut I recently learned, we open up the Find and Replace screen. We're going to replace every occurring instance of image penny with image penny_exp_, where exp means expression. And then we click on Replace All, and voila! Easy peasy! This way, we've now prepared all the building blocks we're going to need to create our layered image. There are other ways of doing it, but I prefer this workflow because of a few things that you will see once we get into variables. Now, time to code ourselves a penny. Again, similarly to how we define a normal image, we start by writing layered image to tell Renpy that the object we're defining is a layered image. We follow it up with a space, and then the callable name for the object. In this case, we're going to just call it penny. As a general rule, as you will see that layered images calling can get verbose, try to keep the names of all elements as short as possible. For example, in a game I've been developing called Apex Sweeper, there is a character named Lanolin, but I called her layered image simply Lan. So, to reinstate, layered image, space, the callable name for the object, and we follow it up with a colon. We go now to the next line, tabbed once to the right, to start adding the layers of the layered image. In the Renpy language, the layer containers are called groups, and we define them similarly to how we define the layered image itself. We write group, add a space, then the name of the group. This is not going to be a callable, so you can make it as long as you want, as long as it's one word. In this case, we're going to simply call it base, and follow it up with a colon. Now, something really important to keep in mind is that the order you put the groups in matters, as they're going to be rendered one on top of the other, from the top and all the way to the bottom. Meaning that if I create another group, we can just copy this wholesale with the name face and put it below the base group. The elements from the face group are going to be rendered second, meaning they are going to appear on top of the elements of the base group. Which makes sense. We want facial expressions to be on top of the body, no? Because otherwise they would be hidden by the character's base sprite and that would be ridiculous. But say instead we had another group called tail. We want that to appear behind the base body, no? Which means you will create the new tail group above the base group in the code, telling Renpy that you want this layer to be rendered first. Think of it as making a sandwich. The higher up in the ingredient list the group is, the sooner it gets put on the table. So be careful not to start with mayo instead of bread. Now, our groups are created, yes, but they're empty. We need to add the different options, the different images that can be displayed for each layer. And the code name for those in Renpy is attributes. To define them, once again, we go to a new line after defining the group. Let's start with the body group, as that only has one image. Tab once more to the right, and then we go attribute, all lowercase. All these commands are fully lowercase. Add a space, then the name we want to give to this specific attribute, and in this case, we're going to call it base. Then, once again, colon, and a new line. And here, finally, we need to tell Renpy what image do we want this attribute to display when it's called. That would be the latest addition to the penny family of images. Penny underscore body underscore base, between quotes. So, tab to the right, always pay attention to the tabbing after a colon or you will get an error at runtime. Open quotes, and copy-paste the name of the image. And that's it! We created our first attribute for our first group for our first layered image. To go through the steps again, real quick, define the layered image with layered underscore image, name of the image, colon. New line, define the group with group space, name of the group, colon. New line, define the attribute with attribute space, name of the attribute, colon, and finally, between quotes, write the name of the image you want this attribute to display. Got that? Then let's define all the expression images as well. we're going to define the attributes using the lowercase names of the expressions from the original Penny image. That way, we won't need to change anything in the code for the previous dialogue. So, I will define attribute happy, then attribute surprise, attribute angry, and so on. Once you defined all of them, that is it. You created your very first layered image. And if we did everything correctly here, we don't need to change anything anywhere else. Let's run the game to test and... Oh no! Penny has lost her head! And neck! And everything else. She's now just a floating facial expression. What has happened? Oh, of course. See, while we wrote the code so that the previous commands to call expressions would be the same, the previous image calls do not have any commands for the body group. When using a layered image, if you don't call any attribute for a group, that group will not be rendered, meaning that since there is right now no command in the entire game where we called an attribute for the body group, we never tell Renpy to render it. Now, to do it properly, at this line, we will need to write Penny, then base to refer to the base attribute to the body group, and then happy to refer to the happy attribute of the face group. Run it again. And that fixed it. Now that we referred an attribute in the body group, the visual layer of the image is no longer empty and thus gets rendered. But there is a but, which I'm sure some of you already thought of. There is only one image in the group layer. Do we really need to do this every single time? Isn't there a better way? There is. Let's revert this command. No, let's do one better. I'm going to remove base, but also happy, and leave it at just show Penny. And this is the reason why. There is a way to tell Renpy to always, no matter what, default to displaying a specific attribute for each group. That way, even if you forget or do not give any group input when first displaying a layered image, the engine will have your back. And how do we do that? We just write default. That's it. It is that dumb. Pick the attribute you want to become the group's default, go to before the colon, add a space, and then default, all lowercase. That's it. If you only have one image in a group, this is an easy way to never have to call that attribute. And in groups with a lot of possible attributes, this is an easy way to make sure it never gets rendered as empty. So we're going to add space and default to the happy attribute of the face group. Save, always save. And let's load the game. And fixed! Congratulations everyone! You've now mastered the basics of layered images. Thanks to the patrons who voted for it, as I believe it is a tool from the Renpy toolbox to learn sooner rather than later, as it is going to be useful for a lot of more advanced processes. The quicker you familiarize yourself with it, the better. And speaking of voting, with this video being released, the next poll for the next subject is also open. If you want a chance to vote, consider joining the JPDE Patreon, subscribe to our social media, especially on this YouTube channel to never lose a new lesson, and join the Discord Academy to hang out with all your fellow students. Once again, Happy New Year game devs, I will see you in the next video. Ciao!